G'day, I'm Costa Georgiadis from Gardening Australia. Over the years, Australian Story has followed the remarkable efforts of farmer Peter Andrews to drought-proof the land. His unorthodox methods were once considered heretical, but a growing band of supporters have taken up his cause. At Mulloon, outside Canberra, a like-minded group of landholders set out to prove that Andrews' methods work. Now, during one of the worst droughts in living memory, their results are cause for hope.
Mulloon is coping extremely well with this drought. Despite it being the driest 6 months on record, Mulloon Farm is doing a lot better than other properties. The paddocks may look brown at the moment, but underneath the surface, the soil is alive.
If you want to see how to beat the drought, the answer is less than 1 hour from Canberra. Let me tell you the simple miracle of Mulloon Creek. There's no water flowing into Mulloon from upstream, yet there's water flowing from Mulloon downstream.
All we've done is reproduced what was a natural process in Australia's landscapes. We've been able to get water into the floodplains, which sustains the landscape in a drought.
We can fix all this, that's the good news. And we can do it quickly. And we can do things on our farms where we don't have to rely on the rainfall all the time. We absolutely need this. Otherwise, we will not be able to hand anything but a continually eroding, destroying landscape to the future generations.
The success of Mulloon is a testament to a moment in time when two giants of Australian agriculture came together and met. Tony Coote and Peter Andrews are going to go down as giving Australia its greatest gift ever. They've shown farmers not only how to survive during droughts, but how to thrive.
My property, Mulloon Creek Natural Farms, is about 6,000 acres between Canberra and the coast. I've had this farm for about 40 years. Over this period of time, we've shifted from conventional agriculture to doing everything totally naturally. I could see that no matter how well you managed your land and how good a farmer you were and whatever methods you used, that you cannot do it unless the land is hydrated. Peter Andrews can look at a landscape like a musician can look at a piece of music. He can read how the water flows and how the whole system works, how to slow it down, how to still the water, how to let it soak into the banks to hydrate the land all around it.
Tony was inclined to say, I want to make a legacy because I believe the world should know about this. And he just put every bit of effort he could into it to achieve that outcome.
Tony Coote approached Peter Andrews when he was in a horrible drought in 2006. But for Pete, this story began decades before, when he realised that there was something fundamentally wrong with the landscape at his Tarwin Park horse stud near Bylong. Peter's passion was always his racehorses and getting them to run as fast as they could, and he realised he needed the perfect original Australian landscape to make that happen.
When Dad purchased Tarwin Park, it was a highly eroded, salinised landscape. He set about repairing the degraded flow lines and making sure that He got the right amount of plants in there that could start to build the system.
Within only a couple of years, Peter turned Tarwin Park into a flourishing, productive and vibrant landscape.
What Peter's natural sequence farming does, it rehydrates the landscape. So put simply, you get the water back in the land like it used to be prior to colonisation.
I saw that for land to go through a drought, you had to have reserves of water somewhere. And there were shapes in these sediments in the floodplains which proved that they worked like a series of giant sponges that filled up and they trickle-fed the rest of the system through the dry periods. And so I said, well, let me see if I can do that. Maybe I'll fill up a floodplain and see what happens.
The first thing he did was tried correcting the constantly eroding creek. So he brought in a bulldozer and he battered the banks down and he built some structures in the creek and planted willow trees and reeds. Certainly a lot of the neighbours were a little bit worried that he was taking all the water by blocking it up in the creek. They call in the authorities quite regularly. He used to always get phone calls from the departments saying, what are you doing? Quite often they just come out here and I know I remember lots of heated discussions with neighbours out the front of the house, people concerned about what he was doing.
He was using weeds when we're spending billions of dollars to get rid of them. He was planting willows when you get government grants to take them out. He was planting reed beds when people thought you pull them out of swamps. Everything he did was contrary to what everybody was being told by the authorities, and this created an enormous atmosphere of fear and mistrust. He was seen as the heretical bloke up the valley, the nutter who wouldn't listen to anyone and who just did his own thing.
What Peter did was to hold the water back, not dam it, not prevent it from moving, but to slow it down so that the water, the wet paddock remained wet.
Water's filling the hole. Stage one is to get the erosive processes out.
The results that I saw when I got to the farm for the first time on that first day was clear indications of the beginning of a recovery of land which had clearly was severely degraded.
Once you get the hydrology right, this grass mix will stand 5 months or more.
That's fantastic.
So that's 5 centimetres of soil formation. I go over farmland all across the Central West and you never see soil being built, you see it being degraded. I think it's the most significant contribution to landscape restoration that I've seen in Australia.
If you go to the properties where Peter Andrews has been working, those properties from the air are green. The neighbouring property is brown.
Up to 3 times a week, he would go down to Sydney, knocking on people's doors, going to meetings with businessmen, trying to convince them that this was the way to go. He would sleep in the car and do it all again the next day. And then he'd come home. Quite often he'd only be here for a few days and he'd do it all over again. He did that for years.
Oh, that's the problem, you see. You guys have been too long in the city looking at the fish couldn't live in these rivers the way they are. There's no water. We've drained it all into the sea. Look, so how the hell are they if you have any doubts, I'm quite happy to take you anywhere in the landscape. Worldwide, we've got destroyed landscapes. It was looking after itself until humans got involved. Why can't we recognise that? Stupid. I mean, if it were not preventable, then I wouldn't mind, but it is completely preventable.
Tony Coote realised that he had to do things differently to what used to happen on the farm. But having heard about the work of Peter Andrews, they embarked on a sort of pilot project on about 3 kilometres of Mulloon Creek running through the home farm.
I've been trying to put in, you know, a couple of big rocks just up on this ledge here, at the back of this there.
They flatten out and they fall down.
Well, Tony was a very successful businessman in the jewellery industry at Angus and Coote. But he always had a very strong connection to the land. He bought his first piece of what's now Mulloon Creek Natural Farms back in the late 60s.
We've brought the MG up from Sydney and Daddy's having a little zoom around. The bull's about to charge you, Daddy.
When we were kids, we thought it was just normal for our creek to be way down there with cliff sides on both sides, like a drain.
The condition of the land on my property, it was a deeply eroded, incised channel, up to 10 metres down into the, cut into the landscape, with very little vegetation around it.
His style of management when he was in the retail business was very much a big picture type of guy. So he was very good at seeing what had to be done and finding the right person to do it.
It was so degraded that we put 6 truckloads of blackberry canes in the creek to trigger the fertility. Now it's growing its own fertility. It's got to a stage now where fish would love to live there. Every bird wants to go there, and the frogs are all singing. They're happy.
The results, we could see it within 1 year, and that was during drought. When we got a bit more moisture, it was extraordinary. We have seen a 63% increase in the production on the hydrated land. We've seen drought proofing when there's no water coming in at the head of our valley. There's always water flowing out the bottom of the valley. We've got fish back in the stream that have only been seen in the upper reaches of national parks, and they thought they disappeared. I'm quite passionate because I can see that it works.
Dad had been obsessive with seeing what he could see in the Australian landscape and getting that out and proving to people that it worked. But in doing so, he lost sight of the core business which paid the bills, which was the farm. And so as a result, we got ourselves into financial difficulty.
The bank foreclosed on Peter. Thankfully, his son Stuart was able to buy Tarwin Park off the bank. But because Peter had so much emotion tied up with the property, that caused a huge rift between father and son, and it was just horrible to watch.
It certainly created tension between Dad and I because he didn't agree with all of the decisions.